Namo Buddhaya. Welcome back to our afternoon Sutta Study program on this Magha Puja full moon day. As usual, we're going to begin with just a little silent meditation to settle in for about 10 minutes, and then we'll move on to our Sutta study. So, inviting you just to find your posture, settle in, I'll ring the bell, about 10 minutes. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Once again, good afternoon to all, and welcome to our Sutta Study program. So today is a day of transitions and beginnings for us. We are here at Dhammadharini. We are entering our winter retreat period. For the next 2 months, we will be in retreat. We will still be offering programs on Sundays, but with the idea that they're more meditative and less intellectual, perhaps. At least that's the goal. We'll see how it goes. But really choosing suttas that are supporting us in our theme of practice, which for this retreat time will be, our theme is called From Clear Knowing to a Boundless Heart. And we're starting with the theme of basic just awareness and mindfulness. And then we'll be progressing through a series of teachings up into the Brahmaviharas and the boundless and liberated heart by the second month. So we'll see how it goes. We'll be inviting all of you to be joining us in this journey in various ways. So joining through this sutta study. Also, if you're on our regular Zoom links mailing list, you should have already gotten an email that has some of the resources we'll be using for our own practice here. We'll be working with some of the books and recordings that are in that email. And you're welcome to follow along and join us in this time of more secluded style of practice, and joining us in the benefits of that, we hope. So, today is the full moon, and those who are here this morning have already heard me talk about the full moon, but I'm going to say it again. So this is the full moon of the month of Magha Puja, known as Sangha Day. It's the day recorded as the lunar anniversary of the Buddha's one of the simplest formulations of his teachings, the Ovada Patimokkha, which says that we should avoid all evil and do good and purify the mind, and that this is the teaching of all the Buddhas. So this is the core of what we're doing here. Especially today, working on the purifying the mind part. This is what we're here for, what meditation is for. So it's also the lunar anniversary of the Buddha's announcement that he was going to be going into Parinibbana 3 months later. So the commencement of his final 3 months of walking and teaching. And then also it's the anniversary of, similarly, Mahapajapati Gautami Teri's announcement of her Parinibbana. She passed away a year or 2 before the Buddha. And on this date, she announced that she would be passing away in 7 days. And she gave 7 days of final teachings. And so we'll be honoring her final 7 days of teaching this week internally here. And we'll be celebrating her Parinibbana in conjunction with the regular Sutta study next week. Next week we'll have the regular Sutta study and then a little bit of an honoring for her afterwards. So welcome to join us for that if you'd like. For today, we're going to be moving into our theme of mindfulness, of awareness. And I'm actually your guest teacher today. we were expecting a different guest teacher, Sayadaw Ujagara, who's a great meditation and retreat teacher and leader who has joined us for some teachings here with Dhammadharini in the past, and regularly he teaches at IMS and the Forest Refuge and places like this. Anyway, he will be joining us every other week during this retreat time for our Sunday afternoons. And he was supposed to be here today, but he came down with laryngitis, and so I'm filling in. And so hope to hear from him next week, or possibly the following week. We need to confirm with him. Anyway, what I have to talk about today is something that is sort of core to our practice anyway, which is the mindfulness. I'm going to talk today about the Satipaṭṭhānasutta, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And those who were here this morning, we did a little meditative tour through the Satipaṭṭhanas. And yes, the idea that I wanted to get across is that, these 4 foundations of mindfulness, they are, to name them, they are the body, the feelings, the mind, and the Dhammas, which can be translated various ways and has been translated various ways. Bhante Sujato says principles. It's sort of showing, it's about conditionality and how things work. It's this understanding of how the things are connected and how you can work with them. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But these are the places where we can establish our mindfulness. And establishing our mindfulness there will give us a good foundation for our practice. It will allow us to be strong and flexible and able and nimble. And the metaphor I gave this morning was of, if you're going to do a yoga practice, you need a good mat. Otherwise, you're going to slip, you're going to fall, at least especially at the beginning. So that's your foundation. It's a suitable foundation for your practice, is the mat. And these 4 foundations of mindfulness, they're like suitable things to put your mindfulness on so that you won't slip and fall, and so that you'll be able to practice and get strong and flexible and nimble and all of this. So with that, we can go to the sutta. Now, this is a very famous sutta, one of the most famous and most discussed. And in a way, there's not much new that I can say about it, probably nothing new I can say about it. There's also, a couple of thousand years of debates about what certain parts of it mean. And I'm probably not going to resolve those debates for you today either. But let's just look at what it says. And let's look at how this can be a basis for us, for our mindfulness, however we interpret it. Because it has been the basis for people's practice for many thousands of years. It's sort of like the meditation manual of the Buddha, the closest thing to a meditation manual that comes directly from the Buddha. So let's see what it says. Okay. So Satipaṭṭhānasutta. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Kurus, near the Kuru town named Kammasadhamma. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Buddha said this: Mendicants, the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation are the path to convergence. They are in order to purify sentient beings, to get past sorrow and crying, to make an end of pain and sadness, to discover the system, and to realize extinguishment. Let's see. And because this is a very famous and much debated passage, let me give you a couple other translations of it. Um, so that was what we just read is Bhante Sujata's translation. This one is, wait, who is this? Bhante Sudaso. He says, monks, this is the one-way path for the purification of beings, for the complete transcendence of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and depression, for the attainment of the way, for the realization of nibbana, that is, the four establishments of mindfulness. And let me give you one more. This one is Jnanamolitera. Because this path, namely the four foundations of mindfulness, is a path that goes in one way only, to the purification of beings, to the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, to the disappearance of pain and grief, to the attainment of the true way, to the realization of nibbana. So we have here, let me go back to Bhante Sujata's note, this phrase, ekaya no mago, which he translates as path to convergence. The others say one-way path, path that goes only one way. Is given multiple meanings in commentaries and ancient translations. Outside of Satipaṭṭhāna, it is used in only one context in Pali, where it means to come together with. Let's see, it means a place where things unite or converge. The Satipaṭṭhāna leads to everything coming together as one. In other words, as the seventh factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, it leads to samadhi, which includes unification, the eighth factor. So the path to convergence, the place where it all comes together, or the one-way path. Anyway, what it's for is to purify sentient beings, get past sorrow and crying, to make an end of pain and sadness. He says to discover the system. Others said the attainment of the true way, or the attainment of the way. Anyway, something about orientation, getting to know how things work and which way to go. It's for that. And for realizing extinguishment, nibbana. Now here he just calls it the four kinds of mindfulness meditation. Others say, yes, four establishments of mindfulness, or four foundations of mindfulness. So the word is Satipaṭṭhāna. Okay, well, that's not the most helpful. Satipaṭṭhāna. There's attending mindfully. Well, okay, in this case, the dictionary doesn't actually help us very much. But it has this root in it, ta, the T-H-A, which means like standing or established. It's actually the same root, I think, as the word, as in establish or stand. It has this strength to it. Anyway, it sounds pretty good, right? We want to get past sorrow and crying. We want to make an end of pain and sadness. And this is what it's all about. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing any of these exercises in this sutta, to bring us to nibbana. Okay, so what for? It's when a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of feelings, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of the mind, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of principles, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. So literally, Kaccayana means one who observes a body in the body, which Bhante Sujato here translates as observing an aspect of the body. Literally, it means a body in the body. It refers to focusing on a specific aspect of embodied experience, such as the breath, the postures, etc. And we'll see some examples of this. Keen implies effort. Aware is the wisdom of understanding situation and context. Covetousness and displeasure are the strong forms of desire and aversion that are overcome by sense restraint in preparation for meditation. So, well, it's helpful to situate ourselves here. Where does this kind of practice come on the path? Sammasati, right mindfulness, is the 7th of 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. And so it comes after right view and right intention and right action, right speech, right livelihood. Comes after right effort. So there's sort of a lot of groundwork that has come before this that helps with getting rid of the more gross kinds of covetousness and displeasure for the world, right? Just by observing ethical behavior, by some degree of renunciation, by trying to give up the gross, right effort involves getting rid of the unwholesome or preventing it from arising, and developing and cultivating the wholesome, and preventing it from falling away if you've got it. So there's been a lot of work leading up to this, and at this point, come and sit down and start doing this particular kind of observation, having cleared away a number of things already in the past. So, observing the body, observing feelings, the mind, and principles. So we'll come back to this word of principles when we get to the section. The Dhammanupassana is sort of the hardest to translate and one that I think is the most confusing to people, but we'll get there. Starting with what is most tangible, the body. Observing the body. How does a mendicant meditate observing an aspect of the body? It's when a mendicant, gone to a wilderness, or to the root of the tree, or to an empty hut, sits down cross-legged, sets their body straight, and establishes mindfulness in their presence. Sometimes they say mindfulness to the fore, mindfulness to the face. Some people say this means mindfulness specifically of like the, just the space just outside the nose, very precise space. They're establishing mindfulness for mindfulness of breathing. But personally, I feel the translation is just like bringing mindfulness to the front, making it the fourth thing in your experience is the main point here. Like, this is what we're doing. We're developing mindfulness. We're bringing it here and now, setting it up, establishing it. And then, well, it needs a foundation. If you're trying to set it up and get it firmly established, you need to found it on something. So you're giving it this a foundation of the breath, in this case, in the body. So mindfully they breathe in, mindful they breathe out. And this is step 1. You can do this a long time. Just knowing the breath coming in and out. And as you sit and know the breath coming in and out, then it's natural to start to be able to see the qualities of the breath, whether the breath is long or short. Here, Bhante Sujato has it as heavily or lightly, a heavy breath, a light breath, a rough breath, a subtle breath. The point is not to be controlling the breath, but to know it, however it is. And it's common in breath meditation, as it tends to deepen, that the breath gets lighter and shorter. You know, it takes its own time, and if it's not doing that, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. But it is something that is commonly experienced, that the breath just really settles down until, you know, things are so calm. You don't need such deep breaths. It's just a little, getting more subtle, more small. And so watching that process happen, or just watching whatever it is that's happening with the breath. And I practice like this, I'll breathe in, experiencing the whole body. I practice like this, I'll breathe out, experiencing the whole body. This is another one where there's a lot of debate about what it means. So one explanation is that this means the whole body of the breath. That means the breath from its beginning to its end continuously, without breaks, keeping the awareness there. Another interpretation is that you're actually broadening the attention to the whole physical body, and feeling as the breath sort of infuses the whole body. You know, I think both can be valuable ways to practice. Personally, I've done both, and I think there's value to both. I'm not going to decide this one, which is the right, true way. But to have continuity is important. Keep the awareness there, so it's just there. And this takes training. This is the training part, is to keep it there, to not have it be flying off some other direction, but just staying, resting with the breath, and experiencing the entirety of that, whether it's entirety in terms of time or in terms of filling all of our experience of the body. Either way, we're aiming for continuity here of awareness. And then I practice like this. I'll breathe in, stilling the physical process. Practice like this. I'll breathe out, stilling the physical process. The physical process, kaya sankhara. Again, there's a lot of debate about what does this mean. So another way it's been translated is like calming the bodily formation. But what is the bodily formation then? Bhante Sujato here in his notes is saying this really means that this is the breath itself. The breath itself becoming so soft, so subtle, so light, as to be almost imperceptible, as if it stopped. Another way to understand it, or that it's sometimes taught, is that it's like the bodily energies, this kind of, they just still, they just calm down. Or whatever little energies are make you want to fidget and shift in your seat back and forth, all those little, whatever it is that's nudging you that you can't quite sit still, even if you're sitting pretty still, but you still have to just shift a little bit. All of that just settles. Even the subtle levels of that just kind of still, and then the body is just at ease. The breath is just at ease. allowing all of those energies that are pushing you anywhere else, anywhere other than here, just to settle and drop away. And with this continued awareness of breath in and out while this is going on, even as it becomes more subtle. And as it becomes more subtle, then also the attention, the awareness becomes more subtle. But in that case, it means actually the awareness is getting stronger. The awareness is getting strong enough and clear enough that it can see the subtle thing. Like you need some strength and some clarity to be able to see it when it gets so subtle. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in your intention at all. You're only able to see it because you've let everything else kind of still down, and then you can like really see. Like muddy water, if it's all stirred up, you can't see anything, but as it settles down with stillness, then you can see clearly what's going on inside. And then the simile, it's like a deft carpenter or a carpenter's apprentice. When making a deep cut, they know I'm making a deep cut. When making a shallow cut, they know I'm making a shallow cut. And this is a little different from the standard translation, which is about somebody turning wood on a lathe. Like this is a long turn or a short turn. But if we're not carpenters ourselves, not used to working with lathes, that may or may not be clear to us. What does that mean? But I think it has this meaning of, this is a skilled person watching carefully and knowing what they're doing and doing it sort of beautifully and well. Like, if you're somebody who's working on a craft or something, you can get into like a flow state, just sort of like being with the wood or being with the medium of whatever it is that you're working on. And knowing clearly what you're doing and doing it beautifully because you are together with it in sort of this flow state. And that's what I think he's pointing out here. It's like they know what they're doing and why they're doing it, and they're just there doing it with skill, beautifully. And we can be that same way with the breath, with our attention to the breath. And so doing this kind of awareness of the breath is a way of meditating, observing an aspect of the body. You can do this internally, externally, or both internally and externally. And here we come to a sort of refrain that will be showing up at the end of every different meditation in this sutta. All of them end with the same refrain. It says you can observe this internally, externally, and both internally and externally. Now, what does that mean? It is typically explained as internally means my own body. This body here is breathing, and I can see it for myself. Externally would mean, there's other bodies around. There's other people in this room with me. There's all of you on the Zoom, and be aware that you're breathing. And internally and externally would be sort of, both simultaneously, knowing there's just breath. It's just, for those who are in the room with me, there's like even air exchange, right? Your breath, my breath, not really different. It's just breath, just body. Right? For some of the meditations, this is sort of, I think, more relevant, more interesting, more clear for some of them than for others. Why it would be useful, why it's important to be like breaking down the boundary between self and others. For this one about the breath, I think, I don't know, maybe I haven't worked with it enough myself, paying attention to other people's breath, but I feel like it's not as deeply relevant for this one. And actually, Bhante Sujato agrees. Or maybe he's the one who gave me the idea to mention this. I think he's right. Internally is one's own body, externally the bodies of others, or external physical phenomena. This distinction is applied broadly in Buddhist meditation, but it is more relevant in some contexts than others. In the case of the breath, one is focusing on one's own breath. But when contemplating, say, a dead body or the material elements, which we'll get to soon, there's more of an external dimension. Starting with me in here and the world out there, this practice dissolves this distinction so that we see that we are of the same nature as everything else. So our awareness can be broad like this. It doesn't have to distinguish me and you. Again, another part of the same refrain that appears at the end of all of these meditations. They meditate observing the body as liable to originate, as liable to fall, as liable to both originate and vanish. So, liable to arise and cease, originate and fall, come and go. These bodies are impermanent. They come from somewhere. And when the conditions for them fall apart, the bodies fall apart. And the breath also. When the conditions for breath are there, then the breath is there. When the conditions for breath cease, then the breath ceases. You can see this in a small way, just in the pause between in-breath and out-breath. There's brief cessation there before the next breath arises. There's various scales and ways that you can look at this. You can also think of it, with the life of the body, breath being connected with life. And when the life ceases, breath ceases. But also just in this moment, seeing the arising and cessation of each breath, one after another. They keep coming, and they keep going, and they keep coming and going. That's what this means. And then the third part of this refrain, that again is repeated after all of the meditations. Or mindfulness established that the body exists to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness. They meditate independent, not grasping at anything in the world. So this is just purity of mindfulness. Just the foundation is just enough. Okay, yes, there's a foundation, and there's mindfulness. And mindfulness here really is to the fore, allowing for independence, allowing for not grasping at anything in the world. Okay. So that's how a mendicant meditates, by observing an aspect of the body. That's the first, one way of meditating, by observing an aspect of the body. There are more ways, not just the breath, and not just when seated. We don't have to be sitting on a cushion in a quiet place. We don't have to be at a root of a tree or in the wilderness. It is possible to establish mindfulness on the body in other ways, in other times. So, for instance, in any posture. So, you can be mindful of the postures. Furthermore, when the mendicant is walking, they know, I am walking. When standing, they know, I am standing. When sitting, they know, I am sitting. When lying down, they know, I am lying down. Whatever posture their body is in, they know it. So this one is very suitable for just any time in daily life. Anytime you need to pause and reestablish mindfulness, body is always there and it's always in a posture. And even in the midst of activity, in the midst of all sorts of things, just when awareness comes, if you need a foundation real quick to put it on, it's like, oh, okay, sitting. And you can just apply it there. Knowing sitting, what is sitting like? Knowing standing, knowing lying down, knowing walking. You can do this all day, every day. yeah, I've experienced in walking meditation, or even not meditation, but like if I've just come out of a long meditation retreat and then I'm walking somewhere. I'm not in retreat anymore, but somehow there's like the awareness has been infused in the body in such a way that just like the experience of walking is very different. Just like really awareness of the movement, and it's almost like I'm not walking. It's like the body is walking itself. I'm just kind of flowing with it and knowing it, but it's like, it feels again like flow, like a flow state. Okay, I'm just walking. In a good way, in a peaceful way, just being aware of that. And yes, there's stuff going on around, but just, okay, I'm walking through this place. Whatever posture their body is in, they know it. And so they meditate observing an aspect of the body internally, knowing your own posture. Externally, knowing the posture of others, both internally and externally. Yeah, if you were out and about in a public setting, say you're sitting in a waiting room or you're on a bus or something, you can sort of check in, like, what am I doing? What are these other people doing? Like the movements, similarities. We're all just, we're all just moving around all day in kind of the same ways with kind of similar bodies. Yes, Richard.
Thank you, Arya. I know there's this concept, and I myself have held to this concept, that the external is like other bodies, and the internal is your own body. But as we were going through the sutra right now, it just occurred to me that, like here, whatever posture their body is in, they know it. But he doesn't mention any other bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're contemplating your body internally, right, you're internally feeling your breath going in and out, or you're feeling some sensation or whatever in the body. But there's another way to observe your own body, as if you're an external person looking at your body. This is how my body is situated right now in the world, surrounded, by the world, by the elements. I don't know if I'm being clear about what I'm saying, but it just struck me that Buddha never mentions someone else's body or anything like that. It's always, what's going on with your body, right? And then it just struck me that there's actually two ways, of observing. There's like a fully internal way where you're just focusing on the processes and the experiences and things like that, and later on the mental things that you're going through. And then there's another way of like still looking at your body, but almost like a subjective objective situation from an external viewpoint. I don't know. It's just an idea. I'm not saying anyone has to agree with me on it or anything, but it's like an insight that just came to me just based on the fact that the Buddha himself here in his words, he never mentions someone else's body. He's always talking about, your body, right? Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning that. I think it's an interesting point, actually. And like there are experiences people have, like the sort of classical near-death experience with like floating out of the body and being able to see the body lying there on the hospital bed or whatever it is. That people who have experienced that, there's something profound about that for them. Something really transformative about that for them. I read about some experiment they're doing, I don't know, in Europe somewhere, some psychological lab found a way to, like, through I don't know, what's it called, like through virtual reality headsets, they could like induce this experience in people somehow. where they had the sense that they were like floating outside their body. And just how sort of like, well, for some people profound, for some people like strange and shocking. Like they couldn't look at themselves the same way again after they had had that experience of this sort of like artificially induced experience of looking at the body from the outside.
I think they use some kind of magnets. They make a helmet or something, and it does some kind of either electrical currents or magnets or something in them. Now, when I was 13 and a half, I started to become conscious in my dreams. But I thought I was just, just dreaming, imagining. So I would like just imagine I was flying around my neighborhood, something a 13-year-old kid would do. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't very imaginative. Maybe other people had bigger imaginations than mine. And it lasted for a little while, a month or so, and then it dissipated. And then in my shortly after my 14th birthday sometime, I stumbled on a book in my Catholic grade school library, witchcraft. And I thought, this is strange. What is a book on witchcraft doing in a Catholic library? It was like a shock to my mind, right? So I took the book out just out of curiosity. I had no interest in witchcraft, but I took it out, I read it, and I found the book horrifying, invoking demons, all kinds of stuff. And if you made the slightest mistake, they grab you and make you their servant in hell forever. And like, who would ever even attempt to do such things? But the very last chapter was on witches' covens. And in there, the author said that they weren't really flying there on broomsticks. They were doing this thing called astral projection and flying to these things. And I thought, and when I read that, I thought, is that what I was doing when I was coming awake in my dreams? So it set me on a path of studying astral projection, and I actually mastered it to the point where I could, at night when I was going to sleep, I could roll out of my body and see it laying on the bed. And I was still a kid. I didn't have much imagination. Maybe I just fly out the window in the neighborhood a little bit or something. Come back. But so I'm well aware that those things are possible, and not just in a a near-death experience or anything like that. That you can master those type of things. But I was thinking of it more in terms of psychologically, just psychologically, just visioning your body more as an object, as if you were external to it and visioning it, as an object. I'm not saying that wouldn't be a profound experience for someone who never experienced it, being outside their body and seeing it as separate from them. But
yeah, and I think
anyways,
that
thank you
was
very much.
sort of what I was aiming at, is whether it's whatever the way that this happens, that just I think you're right that there is something interesting and different in looking at the body from the outside. That change in perspective, that depending on circumstances, can be a profound thing. To look at it, yes, I have this internal experience, like I'm situated here. I sort of feel like I'm here around the eyes somehow, right? That's where I am. That's my feeling about it personally. And I have extensions out here, my arms and feet, like they're connected to this me that is centered about here. And I have sensations that go out a certain distance and not further, right? So I have this internal experience of the body, but there is also the ability, like mentally, to look from the outside and see from the outside. And both those perspectives are true in a way. And I think, in a way, like looking internally at my body, looking internally at others' bodies, like you also get the same shift of perspective. Like, what would it look like from that other person to look at me? And anyway, I think in general, this thing about internal and external is about like breaking down the boundaries of thinking like actually this sense of self that is kind of centered around the eyes, that's me and that's true and that's the only way to look at it. And I'm solid and I'm here. There's this feeling, but the internal, external, this investigation, this kind of meditation is meant to like break that up a little bit, shift it around, not get so stuck thinking that that's what it is. That's who and what I am. Ananea, you have a hand. Oh,
Yeah, I was thinking too that, well, what you're elucidating too is that, in mindfulness, there's a point too where, you're aware of being aware, right? And that's a desirable state to be in, aware of being aware of your actions and the processes that go along and activities that go along with that. And yeah, years and years and years ago, I was very, very ill, and I had an experience of, and the doctors really didn't know what was wrong with me. But anyway, at a point, so they're doing all these treatments and stuff and telling me all these things, and at a point, I could distinctly feel myself above the bed, looking down at the being in the bed, in my physical body, and really understanding that at that moment, I was really deciding whether to go or whether to stay. And it's a very interesting, very interesting thing to experience. And any moments like that are what Richard is discussing too. When you're really a psychic, like a Moggallana or whatever, you can apport yourself, and the Buddha did that. There's, there's places in the sutta where he appears and could bilocate. He could be in one place and the other. But I think the reason that he doesn't talk about, never says, he always says you, is because he's completely enlightened. He does not have any distinctions in his reality. I mean, I'm saying those words, but I mean, I'm not enlightened, so I can't speak to the exactly how that was for him. But he had no separations in his identity, and he's always saying you because he's trying to explain which he does over and over and over again, of how to work this, or how this, how the teaching of how this works, how this process works, or how this comes together, and what you need to do the practice. Anyway, that's my
yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So yeah, like what's interesting about these is that on the one hand, we're really grounding in something very solid and present and tangible, which is the body in a certain posture, like something that's really here and now and clear. And on the other hand, we're sort of breaking up this this sense of solidity in terms of looking at it from different angles, inside and outside, and also looking at it as impermanent, as liable to arise, liable to cease. The postures are reconfiguring themselves all the time, right? I can't identify with sitting because I know also I'm going to get up and move around. And so then to just have something solid that we can know here and now, but also understand that it is, when we look into it deeply, it's not quite the way that we think it is. And this is an opportunity to bring our awareness to understanding more deeply what is a posture, what is a body. Is it a safe, solid refuge for us? Well, it's a solid foundation for our mindfulness. It's something that is good for us to bring our mindfulness to and train it on. But it's not, something that the body itself, the object of meditation, is not something we can rely on. But the awareness is something that we can train on this experience, no matter what it is. Yes, Richard?
Thank you. I've read this sutta many, many times, but this is the first time I've noticed it. This line, they meditate observing the body as liable to originate, as liable to fall. That's the exact insight that one gets at the attainment of Sotapan.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That all dhammas, subject to origination, are subject to cessation.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it's interesting. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, it just hit me. I thought that might be interesting with people. Thank you for.
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. Well, this is the place where it all converges, right? This is the path that leads us towards that, towards Sotapanna and beyond. That is the purpose, is to be able to see clearly and have insight, like real, genuine insight into this by again and again applying our awareness to it. Then those insights can come, and that's how it works. Is that if you apply your awareness to looking at it in this way, at some point, like the penny drops, it's like, oh yes, it really is like that. So yeah. Anyway, let's refrain. Mindfulness established that the body exists to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness, and they meditate independent, not grasping at anything in the world. So again, with the postures, this is another way to meditate, by observing an aspect of the body. And there's more. There's a number of different ones for the body. The next is situational awareness, sampajanya. So furthermore, an mendicant acts with situational awareness. This is sometimes translated as clear comprehension. Again, various translations of sampajana. But Bhante Sujato uses situational awareness. A mendicant acts with situational awareness when going out and coming back, when looking ahead and aside, when bending and extending the limbs, when bearing the outer robe, bowl, and robes, when eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, when urinating and defecating, when walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, waking, speaking, and keeping silent. So, whatever you're doing, know you're doing it. There are whole meditation traditions built on this, and just sort of like noting whatever you're doing, like Mahasi method. As you're walking, just like lifting, moving, placing, and then like beginning, middle, and end of lifting, beginning, middle, and end of moving, beginning, middle, and end of placing. As you get to the door, it's like reaching, touching, turning, pulling. This sort of extremely detailed noting is, I don't think that's exactly what the Buddha is saying here that we should do. The extremely detailed noting, I think, is, that's a more modern elaboration on this technique that's being put here. This is what's here, I think, is more basic, more human, just sort of knowing what you're doing when you're doing it. And awareness would include, what are you doing and why are you doing it? Another experience I've had when in the flow of a retreat or meditation is just sort of walking around and having like clarity about why I was doing things when I was doing them. It's like, okay, now I am going to walk to this other room so that I can do this task, and then I will do this, and then I will do this, right? And what was interesting is I wasn't like walking down the hall, like multitasking mentally, like, oh, thinking about this, that, and the other, and like, oh, why did I come to the kitchen? Well, because I needed to do this. Okay, well, I'll do that while I'm meanwhile thinking of something else. It was just like experience of just like being with my own intentions and acting clearly and comprehending what I was doing while I was doing it and why. And it's amazing. So much of our time we don't live like that. We just act on habit and we're kind of spaced out, or at least I am. I don't know about all of you, but we just get into modes where we're just kind of doing stuff, but not really having the clarity about why. And whether what we're doing is even matching and suitable towards our goal. And in monastic life, especially, we are told to reflect when we use the requisites, for instance, like when I wear the robes, when I eat alms food, when I enjoy the lodgings here at the monastery. When we take medicine, we're told to reflect on why are we doing that. For the robes, it's to ward off cold and heat and insects, and for modesty. For food, it's to support the body, for helping with the holy life. For the lodgings, again, it's about cold and heat and insects. Weather, for living in seclusion. And for medicine, it's to ward off painful feelings that have arisen. And all of this, why? To support the holy life, to support our practice. There's nibbana. This is about like walking through the world in a way where you know what you're doing, and you know how even these daily life things, going out and coming back. Well, why are you going out? Why are you coming back? Not that you shouldn't, but you should have a good reason. You should know what you're doing. And you should stick to doing the things that you know and understand and that you know are pointed towards your goal, which is of awakening, of liberation. We do have to keep these bodies going. We do have to interact with other humans. We do have to do a lot of things that are not just sitting at the foot of the tree. But we can develop our mindfulness in these things also. And that's, I think, what this is pointing at is like just awareness of the situation and how to skillfully act and respond in that situation. If the situation is it's time for lunch, okay, I'm going to eat. I'm going to eat mindfully. I'm going to eat for the purpose of supporting my practice. So knowing what the body is doing and how it's engaging with the world. This is another form of mindfulness of the body. And it has this same refrain, although now we've started abbreviating it. They meditate, observing an aspect of the body internally, externally, internally and externally. They meditate observing arising and cessation, origination, falling, origination and vanishing. They meditate just knowing that there is a body, independent, not attached to anything in the world. And so again, this repeats. This is another way of looking at our bodies. And again, this one is very practical for daily life. The postures in this one can bring into anything, anytime. Mindfulness can always be established here on the body because the body is always with us. Okay. Another way, we can look at the repulsiveness of the body, the unpleasant, non-beautiful aspects of the body. So the mendicant examines their own body up from the soles of the feet and down from the tips of the hairs, wrapped in skin and full of many kinds of filth, many kinds of attractive, unattractive things. So this is a classical meditation. And we look at the head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, intestines, mesentery, undigested food, feces, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, saliva, snot, synovial fluid, and urine. And if you want to, you can search online the 32 parts of the body and you'll find websites that like give you pictures of all of these things and explanations of what they are and how to contemplate them. And, people get into it. And some people will say the purpose really is to develop disgust and just sort of not wanting to be with this. Others will say the purpose is just acknowledging the body exactly as it is and not hiding it from yourself, but developing equanimity. And once again, I think there could be value in both of those views. If you're too attached to the body, too much thinking that it's beautiful and desirable and so forth, then really letting the sort of understanding of what's beneath the skin, really letting that affect you in a way. It's like, ugh, it's kind of gross under there. It can break the strength of that attachment and delusion about the desirability of the body. I think it can be good for that, depending on who you are and what your issue is with the body. I think there's also some danger in this meditation because we also, depending on somebody's cultural or conditioning or whatever it is, some of us are taught to really already think the body is gross, especially our own bodies. Maybe other people's have good bodies, but our bodies, of course, are deficient and ugly and horrifying, and we should be ashamed to have such bodies, right? There's all this stuff that's out there in the culture that can make people think like this. And if somebody is coming from that kind of conditioning and they're coming to this practice, then, well, maybe somebody feels affirmed. It's like, oh yeah, I knew the body was gross. The Buddha agrees with me. I don't know. But who knows how people react. But yeah, it can also like exacerbate this sense of negativity towards the body. And if somebody's coming from that perspective on it, then I wouldn't advise them to be taking this as like I should really be grossed out by my own body. It's more like, this is just how it is with bodies. And mine is like this. And those other people who I think maybe they have really good bodies while mine is bad, well, under the skin, they got all the same stuff, right? And it can have this sort of equalizing aspect. This is where the internal and external really kind of, I think, becomes important. That, all of our bodies are like this. None of this stuff that we think is, that we might think is so beautiful is really so beautiful. Daniel, you have a comment?
Yes, we did this meditation some time ago, and I remember for me, I don't think it generated disgust as much as I realized the fragility of the body. And it was kind of like, oh my gosh, you're right. It's all these sort of disparate parts thrown together in a bag with skin around it. It's kind of amazing that we stay alive as long as we do, that it doesn't break down more quickly. And of course, no wonder we have sickness and disease. There's so much chaos in there in a way. And so I found it really helpful in terms of impermanence around it and kind of realizing like, oh yeah, it's a very fragile thing, isn't it? The body. So
yeah, absolutely. That's another reaction I've heard is like, wow, it's amazing it works as well as it does. Given that it's made out of all of this, it's amazing that our bodies work at all, made of meat and blood and guts and gristle, and somehow we still walk around with them, and they allow us to engage with these lives. They allow us to do our meditation practice, right? So it's amazing. And yeah, I think, I don't know, my mom is on this side. She sort of likes anatomy because it's so cool. It's like once you learn how all the little things work, it's so complicated. Like, how many different kinds of substances does a liver have to secrete? It's a lot. It's a lot, and they do it. They're just working all the time, secreting helpful substances for us. It's amazing. Richard?
Thank you. Yes, I know I've mentioned this before, but this word here, many kinds of filth, asuchino. Well, suchi can also just mean just pure, where asuchino would mean not pure. So I think the key to understanding it in this way is to see the example that the Buddha gives about the bag with all the different kinds.
Yeah.
Nothing in there is dirty. There's no stool in there. There's no urine in there. They're all okay. They're all okay. But what he's saying is that this body is not one thing. We kind of look at it like it's one thing, like you just look at the external skin and you see a little bit of eye and whatever, your mouth. But on the whole, it looks like one thing, as if you were looking at, say, a gold statue or a statue made out of some kind of stone or something, granite statue or something, right? It would just be one thing. It would just be that one thing. Whereas the body is all these disparate things, you know what I mean? Somehow, heaped together. And so that, I think that's what he's trying to point out, is that you're thinking of this as yourself, but it's all these different things just kind of like stuck together, and interacting together and working together. And just as if you had a bag full of, here's a pocket of rice, hill rice, and this kind of sesame, and this kind of, nut or something, or grain, whatever the examples are that he gives there. And I think if people, and you've touched on this, if they look at it too much like it's a filthy, disgusting thing, well, that's a very negative emotion, and that kind of negative emotion is actually a downward, leading thing. Negative emotions are downward leading. You want to have an upward leading thing. And the thing that's being explained here is that from the beginning is that, okay, you got your 4 postures, but you can't stay in any one of them. They're always constantly changing. Then you refine that down to every little movement. My fingers are moving. You can't hold anything, and what it's changing. And then finally, it gets down to this point. Well, all these little things are constantly moving around and changing. My hair is growing, different things are happening, right? I'm getting older or whatever, so the skin is starting to fall apart, or various diseases. Everything is, that's the thing. Everything is, so all that which is subject to arising is subject to cessation. And again, as I said earlier, he says, furthermore, a mendicant examines their own body. I know that's a very strong thing and everyone likes it. And I used to think that exact way until I just had this realization now. Buddha never talks about looking at somebody else's body. That would be like a critical thing to do. Okay. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm not saying you can't. Well, like just as I am, they are, something like that. I'm not making that point. But the point is to disassociate yourself from this body, because this mindfulness is going to lead you into the jhanas. And the point of the jhanas is to eventually disassociate you and, set that body aside and forget about it completely. When you get into the formless jhanas, you're going to be totally separate from your body, So, you still have one, Buddha says, but that's just a knowledge, but you're not aware of it. You're not interacting with it. Your mind's not stuck in it in any way. Anyways, and that's my personal view. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I think let's read that simile that you mentioned. I think this is an important point that the simile, like, yes, it says we should look at this as full of many kinds of filth, which is a strong way to speak about it. But then the simile is, it's as if there was a bag with openings at both ends, filled with various kinds of grains, such as fine rice, wheat, mung beans, peas, sesame, and ordinary rice. And a person with clear eyes were to open it and examine the contents. These grains are fine rice, these are wheat, these are mung beans, these are peas, these are sesame, and these are ordinary rice. So it's a very emotionally neutral thing. It's not saying, oh, this rice is so beautiful. It's not saying, oh, these mung beans are so disgusting. It's just very, very neutral. It's just looking clearly at, a bag with 2 ends. Well, there's the mouth, there's the other end, and it's full of stuff. But the stuff is kind of neutral. And we can just see it in that way. Okay, well, yeah, I'm looking at our time. We're not going to get to the other 3 foundations, I think. But maybe we can continue just with the body. And, well, should we do a very brief tour of the other foundations? Daniel, yes.
One other thing that I know, at least for me in these meditations that I found helpful is, our society worships and adores the body so much and holds up these impossible ideals, right? That if we somehow met those ideals, our body would make us happy and we'd be happy with it. And I think some of the most healthy realizations I've had is one, that's an illusion and that body doesn't actually exist. That's just for advertising purposes. And two, that once you accept that all bodies are weird, your body's weird, everybody's body's weird, you can let go of it. You can stop obsessing about it and stop worrying about it and stop being really excited about it or really ashamed of it. That it's just bodies. Everybody's got them. You got one too. And I've found that to be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember, you know, personally, I come from the side of not being very comfortable or happy about having a body. Like I would rather just not. Um, and you know, I could list off the various things that are unsatisfactory about this particular body. But even just having a body at all is kind of, I never liked it very much. I know other people come from the other side of things. But I remember when I was like early, well, relatively early in my meditation practice, I went to a teaching by somebody who led both meditation and like physical practices, and you know, she was guiding us through some practice. And afterwards, somebody else was saying, like, oh, I couldn't quite follow what she was saying about this, but she's just so embodied. And it's just like that for this other person, that was like really inspiring, just to see somebody so embodied. And at the time I was like, well, is that a good thing? Is that what we should be seeking for? Should we be trying to be really embodied? And, you know, coming from my background, I was like, I don't want to be embodied. um, and for me, it's actually really, I think, because I was imbalanced in the direction of wanting to be dissociated from the body, that I actually have found these body practices helpful for like just acknowledging, okay, I have a body. It's here. It's like this. It's not inherently good or bad. It's useful for some things. And I can get to know it, and I can get to know how it feels and how it moves. And I can, you know, not, you know, if I'm just ignoring it, then there's certain aspects of my experience that I'm just like shutting off and not being willing to face. And for me, it's been like in my meditation practice, it's like there were things that I didn't want to experience in the body, didn't want to touch with the body. And it's like, oh, then I'm just like letting those be hidden somewhere and not dealing with them. Whereas mindfulness of the body allows me like just to come into a more healthy relationship with that. Not that I'm gonna be like, oh, my body's so great, I'm gonna have the healthiest, strongest, most beautiful, wonderful body, and I'm gonna live forever, and I'm, you know, people could go that direction too, of like maximizing their bodily potential and getting very like obsessed with that. And that's not really the way either. But just kind of to have a healthy relationship where you can see and understand what's going with the body, where you can work with it, where you can take the information that it's giving you and see how it's connected with the mind, see how it's connected with the feelings, see how it's connected with your Dhamma practice, and not leaving it out, but also not elevating it beyond where it should be, coming to a realistic and helpful kind of relationship with it. Okay, well, yes, I see several hands here. It's a hot topic, actually, this body thing. Shinchana.
Okay. So even though I know this to be inaccurate, for those of you that know about SpongeBob, there's a little character named Plankton, and he drives around a bigger body sometimes, and that's what I think of. Like there's a little plankton in my head driving this body around.
Right. Yeah, it can feel like that. Definitely. That was, you know, yeah, some of the like Western Enlightenment philosophers had whole theories about that. They called it a homunculus, but yeah. Yeah. Anyway, well, then you have to explain what is the little body that's driving around the big body. what's inside of that is just like layers of the onion. But yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Daniel.
Thank you. I know I'm talking a lot this time, but one thing you said that really struck me was about how your experience of mindfulness caused you to become aware of and maybe make more peace with parts of yourself that you rather weren't there. And it just occurred to me and made me realize that's a lot of what, especially lately, mindfulness has been for me, is there are parts of ourselves we would rather not be there. And I think it can be tempting sometimes, at least for me, to use the Dhamma almost as like spiritual escapism and to say, oh, good, I can just like cut those off. Like, I don't like anger. Anger makes me uncomfortable. Buddha says anger is bad. Great. I'll never think about anger again. And then I'll be holy or something. And realizing that it's not that doing that, not only does it create more problems, but that mindfulness isn't about, it's about becoming aware of, including those things we rather not there. And in a mindful, aware way, and not in a letting it take you over way. So anyway, when you mentioned that, it just really resonated with me.
Absolutely, thank you. And yeah, I think this whole sutta, this whole practice is really good for that, of like just seeing what's there and then coming into a reasonable and balanced relationship with it, and having clarity about whether it is to be developed or not, and how to develop it or not. But the first step is just sort of seeing what's there truly and clearly. And we don't have time for other 3 foundations of mindfulness, but they get more and more into this, like the yes, you can feel anger in the body, but also there's in the feelings and in the mind. And then the Dhammanupassana is like understanding, how did that arise? And what is supporting it? And what would support it to end? And so, yeah, thank you. Absolutely. That is what mindfulness is about. It's not cutting things off, but it's also not elevating them. It's using these things as the basis for our practice, for our awareness, and for our growth in the path. Using what's here and understanding it properly. So with that, I think we've come to the end of our time, and we'll close here with our respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the foundations of mindfulness, but I think this was a good conversation, and thank you all for joining. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. All right. So thank you everyone for your patient listening.
Thank you, Aya.
And
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
and hope to keep seeing you time by time. I might be talking less next time I see you, but we'll be online. And so have a good, beautiful full moon day.
Thank
Sorry.
you.